What is the new commission ruling?
That's the big buzz. So there was a federal lawsuit, Burnett versus Missouri, and they said that the realtors there were engaged in some unfair practices, and so in order to eliminate the risk of a class action lawsuit, the National Association of Realtors said, all right, this is what we're going to do. And they had a settlement. And basically, the two big things that people need to know that are happening now is commissions have always been negotiable, but now it is going to be predetermined with the seller whether or not they're going to cooperate with the buyer's agent. And so my favorite analogy, my favorite metaphor with this was if you had a dispute with your neighbor and you went to an attorney and you said, hey, Mr. Attorney, I want to sue my neighbor. And they would say, okay, Eric, you can sue your neighbor, but you have to pay for their attorney as well. That wouldn't go over well with most people. And that's what we've been doing for decades in real estate. You say, okay, I want to sell my house. I'm like, great, but you're going to have to pay the opposition's representation as well. And so that's what we've been doing. That's probably, in a lot of instances, the best way to go. But there are some new fundamentals. So now it is going to be, before we used to say, look, I have a listing contract with you, Mr. Seller, and I have this MLS agreement where I'm cooperating with buyers. So this is the way we do it. This is the way we have to do it. And the federal courts decided, no, it's not how you have to do it. These things are all negotiable. So you decide with the seller whether or not, how much you want to charge them for a commission to sell their property. And then you have to make it open and negotiable to the seller whether or not they wish to cooperate with the buyer's agent. And if they do, how much do they want to compensate that buyer's agent? So there's been a lot in the news and the media about how much this is going to change the dynamics and everything, and you know, people are going to be able to negotiate, and the sellers are going to be like, well, I'm not going to pay anyone. Maybe that will shake out and work out. I don't think it will, but you know, the truth of the matter is, if you have a house that's over $1 million or a property that's over $1 million, and you say to me, Eric, I'm not going to pay you 3%, I'm going to pay you 2%. I'm going to be like, well, gosh, you know, 1.5 million, 2%, that's not a bad day. I mean, that's a good day and everything. And I know there's going to be a lot of work involved and whatever, but you know, that has some possibilities. If you're in that $400,000 to $800,000 range, I know what's going to be involved there, and you know, everybody can put their value and price on what they do. That $400,000 to $800,000, I'm probably like, well, yeah, if I'm going to represent the buyer, I'm probably going to be at 2.5% and everything. But you get down to 250, 200, or 150,000. I'm not doing that for 2%. I mean, you know, that's too much work for me personally. But you might be able to find an agent, and I think you have to remember that you get what you pay for or whatever. If you say to an agent, you know, I'm really doing everything, you're just opening up the house for me, I'm going to give you $500. Maybe you will find an agent that does that or whatever. But I certainly believe in what I do and the representation and the experience that I have and what we're doing to provide value.
So the seller is picking out how much the buyer's agent commission will be?
No. The seller is now making an informed decision about whether or not they want to pay that buyer's agent, and if so, how much. But, okay, now this is the big game changer. Now, in order to show property, a buyer and an agent must have a contract going in called a buyer's agency agreement. That can be exclusive or not exclusive. I'm not going to get into all that, but you're going to have a contract with your agent. You're saying, look, you're representing me, and that agent and the buyer have to work out how much is going to get paid. So it's the Wild West out there. We don't know what the seller's paying. The seller might be paying, just as an example, 3, 4, 2, 1, or they might be paying a goose egg. you and I are going to agree ahead of time. All right, if you want to use me as an agent, I'm going to be 2.5%, or I'm going to be 3%. Okay, and you're going to have it in writing that I'm getting paid 3%. So if the seller is paying out 3%, you don't owe me a dime. We're good. If the seller's paying 0%, in order for you to buy that property, you have a contractual obligation to pay me 3%. If the seller says, well, you know what, I'm going to pay 2%, and you and I have an agreement for 3%, seller's paying me 2%, and you're paying me 1%. So now, really, I think, again, we were talking about the expensive homes, $1.5 million. Those people want good representation. They're very picky. They have a lot of needs. There's a lot going on in that transaction. They probably are going to be fine with whatever arrangement they have with their buyer's agent. We might see a little bit more negotiation in the $400,000 to $800,000 range, but I think there's going to be some tragic repercussions, some unintended consequences, if you will. What about your first-time home buyer that's in that $200,000 to $300,000 range, and they say, "Oh well, I can't obligate myself to 3%. That's going to be $9,000 or $10,000 or whatever." They've already struggled to save up their down payment. They've already struggled to save up for the closing costs, the home inspection, the appraisal, and now I have to out of pocket $10,000 or $9,000 or whatever for you as the agent. They might be blood from a stone. They don't have it. So I definitely think in the lower end, it would behoove a seller to say, no, I'm gonna offer the 3% and everything, but got to be real clear here. Right. It's all negotiable now. You don't have to. And so that's the big difference is having these good discussions with your sellers and with your buyer. I definitely think it's going to be tougher for the buyer's agent for you to say, you know, I'm going to obligate you to a certain amount, and they don't know whether or not, you know, the one house that they like might be paying out the 0%, or the one house they like might be paying out the 2.5%. They're just going to have to make really, really informed decisions. I mean, you guys know me and know how I rarely help buyers and everything. It's extenuating circumstances when I do, so I'm mostly a seller's agent. I haven't been in a situation where I've had sellers say, "No, Eric, I'm not cooperating. I'm not paying out." But that might happen. I had a discussion with a good seller this week. They said, "Well, after Saturday, I don't have to pay the other agent." I was like, "No, that's not how it works. I mean, you know, we've already agreed to that. We've already had that discussion, and we've already done the new paperwork." But it has changed the dynamic, and it definitely changes the dynamic because the main thing is we can't put what commission that we're paying out on the MLS. So it used to go on the MLS. You'd say, "Oh, Eric has this house for sale. It's paying out 3%." Now it doesn't say what I'm paying out. That agent has to call me, and already I have in my file what we're paying. It's called a Form 220, and I just zip that form to the agent, and it lets them know in writing what my seller and I are paying out. So it is a game changer. It's the biggest change in real estate in the last 50 years. I mean, now North Carolina has been so much better because we've had buyer's agency and seller's agency, and we've had a clearer understanding of how this all works. I think most of the good agents over the last 3 to 5 years have said, like, they've done buyer consultations, and before they go out, they get that buyer's agency agreement signed or whatever. But a lot of agents are just hoping and hauling, and you know, they take them out, and they hope they like the house, and they hope that they get paid, and they hope the seller is going to pay them. But it's a whole different ball game now.